Decades after eradicating colonial rule and joyfully embracing self-governance, Africa is crying. Africa is crying once again, but this time it's because her sons and daughters have turned against each other and started fighting for power. Just when we thought that Pan-Africanism, as envisioned by those who preceded us, was becoming a reality, and that the continent is finally uniting for prosperity, a major split has erupted and it is threatening to undo all the gains that the continent had registered in over 60 decades. Today, there is a war that seems to be looming in Africa and particularly within the ECOWAS bloc in West Africa. Alarmed by the rampant military coups d'états that have been going on in the Francophone West Africa, with 6 of them having been staged just within a span of 3 years since 2019, ECOWAS has decided that enough is enough, and that it will not helplessly watch militaries turn West Africa into a haven of coups d'états, perpetual transitional governments and military regimes. While responding to the latest coup which saw Niger's presidential guards turn against President Mohamed Bazoum, who was democratically elected, and depose him, subsequently replacing his civilian government with a military one, ECOWAS leaders issued a warning, calling on the military junta to cede power within 15 days or be met with force from the remaining ECOWAS members.
In the event the authorities' demands are not met within 1 week, take all measures necessary to restore constitutional order in the Republic of Niger. Such measures may include the use of force.
Even though that warning meant that ECOWAS will be forced to deploy its forces for a military intervention in Niger for a restoration of constitutional order, the Niger military junta dismissed the threats, staying adamant and going on with programs to establish a military government. But what was surprising is that the warning received criticism from other Francophone ECOWAS members where military governments are in place. In particular, Mali, Burkina Faso and Guinea warned that any military intervention in Niger would be considered as war against them and that they will immediately rise to defend Niger should that intervention happen.
Avertissent que toute intervention militaire
warn that any military intervention against Niger would amount to a declaration of war against Burkina Faso and Mali. I repeat, forewarn that any military intervention against Niger would amount to a declaration of war against Burkina Faso and Mali. I repeat one last time. Warn that any military intervention against Niger would amount to a declaration of war against Burkina Faso and Mali.
The transitional governments of Burkina Faso and Mali invite the living forces to be ready and mobilized, to lend a hand to the people of Niger in these dark hours of Pan-Africanism.
The brotherly peoples of Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Guinea aspire to more recognition and respect for their sovereignty.
It's for this reason that we have brought this video to you to give you a look at 10 things that will possibly happen should ECOWAS troops invade Niger. Number 1. Mali, Burkina Faso and Guinea will respond. Perhaps this will be the most obvious turn of events since the 3 countries have already warned that they will rise to defend Niger coup plotters in the event of a military intervention from ECOWAS. As to how they will go about this is not clear, but they might start by deploying their troops to Niger to fight alongside pro-coup forces. This will likely be followed with a supply of weapons and any other form of aid. Number 2. The African Union will intervene. Since all the parties in this conflict are bound by the African Union Charter, the African Union will respond by first calling for a ceasefire, de-escalation of the conflict and dialogue for a restoration of order in the country. Should their calls fail to yield any fruits, the AU might be forced to as well deploy its troops for a restoration of normalcy. Number 3. Niger refugees in its neighboring countries will surge. As expected, the war will displace thousands if not millions of people from their homes in Niger, and they will subsequently seek refuge in relatively stable neighboring countries like Nigeria, Chad, Benin, Mali and Burkina Faso, even though the last 2 have their own problems as well. Number 4. Terror in the Sahel will surge. Niger was one of the stable countries in the Sahel that was being used by foreign troops to plan for fighting jihadists in the Sahel, and since the conflict will destabilize the country, the jihadists will find opportunities to rain their terror in the region. Number 5. Poverty in the region will get worse. This conflict will not only cripple the social amenities and development infrastructure that had been put in place in Niger, but will also prevent any nation-building economic activities from being carried out. Poverty levels will surge, leading to malnutrition, secondary crimes and death. Number 6. Unmeasurable war crimes will be committed. Just like the many wars that we have witnessed on the African continent and across the world, some of those in the battlefield will possibly commit war crimes such as the use of innocent civilians as human shield, committing of genocide, rape and other nasty things. Number 7. Anti-war mass protests will erupt across Africa. In various countries on the continent, protests calling for ceasefire will possibly emerge in attempts to pile pressure on both sides to give peace a chance. Number 8. The United Nations, United States, European Union, Russia and other foreign powers will seek to intervene or mediate for ceasefire. Concerned that the situation might escalate into a serious war in Africa and lead to destruction of their interests on the continent, those foreign powers will respond by sending their pro-ceasefire emissaries or by deploying their troops to help in peace restoration. Number 9. Niger military junta and their sympathizers will be defeated or forced to agree to a ceasefire for a restoration of civilian rule. A country can't be under a military rule forever, and that's even why Burkina Faso's Ibrahim Traoré is just a transitional president who is supposed to preside over democratic elections in July 2024. Going by the oath of office that he took on October 6, 2022. It's for this reason that we believe that in the event of this invasion, Niger's coup plotters will ultimately be forced to give way for a civilian government and a return to democracy. Number 10. Other military governments in West Africa will be approached to facilitate return to civilian governments in their countries so as to foster democracy. This is actually the reason why military leaders in Guinea, Burkina Faso and Mali warned that they won't hesitate to defend Niger. They fear that, should a Niger intervention be successful, they will be next, yet they would like to stay in power for a little bit longer. Our number 11 is that these widespread coups d'etats will serve as a warning to African heads of state to respect their constitutions, and value the essence of term limits instead of periodically changing constitutions to rule eternally at the expense of fostering and strengthening real democracy.
Before setting up a unit or anti-coup d'etat unit in ECOWAS, isn't it time that the African head of states or the ECOWAS head of states look into the reason why there are coup d'etats? What are the root causes of coup d'etats? Let them put their house in order first before they set up an anti-coup d'etat unit. Let them put their house in order. And I believe their house is not in order. This unit is set up to defend them and to protect them only, nobody else. What is more coup d'etat than your national constitution gives you 2-term limit, 5 years, 2 terms. After serving 10 years, you want to change the constitution for another term. Is that not a coup d'etat? Because you feel you have the powers to do that. The soldiers have the powers to coup d'etat. That is also another coup d'etat. And they are living with them there. They are there. In the name of civilian, putting on mufti clothes, calling yourself a Democrat, when you loot all the resources of your country, mislead people, torture them, imprison them, burn their businesses to us, and you call that a democracy? Or a civilian rule and an illegally elected government? The leaders must stop lying to their electorate first. They must stop the corruption. They must stop looting our resources. They must understand that they are not a better citizen than anybody.
Putting in mind the destruction, deaths and havoc that it will cause, possibly leading to a civil war in Niger, but as well the gains it might bring, do you support this proposed military intervention by ECOWAS? Leave your comment below and don't forget to subscribe before leaving.